some things are, it's a little shorter than the regular slides that we do, and there's a little less notes for you to take. We've done a lesson like this before. It was just division models was our lesson that we did before earlier in this chapter, where we learned how to make the models, and I showed you on Connect Ed where you can use the models, the virtual manipulatives, and you can drag them out and then you can break them all up. Today you may want to use those even more than before because these are bigger numbers. So some of the numbers that we're going to look at are going to be numbers that are like up into the hundreds. Okay, everybody ready? Waiting for those girls in the back to stop talking. Everybody has to be listening. So this is one more way that another strategy that we could use to divide whole numbers. Just like all the other ways. We've learned lots of ways, and so this way is for some people, the models actually worked for them and they liked using the models. They like to be able to check their answer using the models. And not just that, but sometimes if you think about the way we do the models, once we actually do the standard algorithm, which is the actual steps of divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, you really should just be thinking back to what we did when we were doing the models, because you're doing the same thing, you're just doing it with the numbers instead of drawing the pictures. Okay, so when we divide first into the hundreds place, it's just like what we're doing here when we first divide the hundreds into the circles. So I'll show you that in just a second. So you should be just thinking about it. Because it took us a long time to get that assignment graded today, we're going to skip this one so that we have more time for the notes and things. So look at your math page, which is the Build It page. Let's wait for stapling. Girls, let's wait for stapling, please, till we're all finished. At the fair, you need tickets to ride the rides. 3 friends share 336 tickets equally. How many tickets will each friend receive? So if I use a model, you can see over here, they have, here's 100, 200, 300. So the big squares represents the hundreds models. The longs here, these ones right here, represent the tens, and these ones over here represent the ones. So on your paper, I want you to write what I'm writing on my screen, but I want you to write it on your paper. So the big squares are represented by hundreds because there's 100 little blocks in there. There's also 10 longs in there, right? That also makes up 100. So either 100 of these little 1 blocks or 10 of these longs would be, that could turn into a 100 block. So if we're going to divide the hundreds into 3 groups, because that's what I'm dividing by here, dividing by 3, and yesterday's lesson was the estimating lesson. Today we're finding the actual answer. We're just doing it by drawing some pictures. So I worked out the 336 there. Because I'm dividing by 3, I'm going to make 3 circles. Now I'm going to start with the biggest number. So in this case, the biggest number are the hundreds. So I'm going to take one of each of those, and because there's 3 of them, I can separate one into each of these. So I've used that one, and this one. Now I'm going to take the longs, the tens column, and I'm going to separate those. So I have 3 of those as well. So I have 1 in each column. Now I've used all of these. Now I'm going to separate the ones. And it looks like I have 6 of those. So I'm going to go through distributing them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So how many hundreds are in each group?
1.
Nolan.
There are 100 in each group.
Right. 100 block in each group. And then when I divided the tens into the 3 groups, how many tens do I have in each of my groups? Malachi.
Yeah, 110 in every group.
110 in each group. And then the last question asks, how many ones are in each group? Angelina.
2.
2 ones in each group. I have to go to my next screen here, but you're writing it in on your page. So we have 2 ones in each group. So that's 100, 110, and 2 ones. 100, 110, and 2 ones makes 112. So each friend will receive 112 tickets. If you multiplied, because you could check by multiplying, if you multiplied 112 by 3, you would get 336. So notice in here that these are plus signs, because I want to explain why I wrote it that way. I didn't write it like this. And the reason why I didn't is because 1 plus 1 plus 2 equals 4. And 4 wasn't my answer. I had 100, 110, and 2 ones. So that's why I wrote 100, 110, and 2 ones as a 2. So it's important that you think about that. Just because I put 100's block in there, it doesn't mean a 1. It means 100. That's going to be helpful for you for the rest of the week when we actually do division problems with really big numbers. Okay? Nolan.
You could just simply put the digits together as long as they're as long as they're all all not divisible by, and if they all do not go together up to 10, like if they're
Right. So you're saying like if I had 10 ones in a circle, then that would make a 10. That's why it's
what I'm saying.
if you had,
Just put the digits together as long as they're right.
well, you don't. Okay, let me stop you. So he's saying just put the digits together if they're right, but you don't know if they're right because you're just learning how to do this. And so I would like you to do it the way I'm showing you, which is if you have a 100 block, you're going to list it as 100. If you could list it like this. If you have a 10, you're going to list it like this, and then if you have a 2, you list it like this. And it's kind of like you're adding up all of the pieces. The reason why is because I'm showing you tomorrow. Hand down. Here's the reason why. I'm trying to give you the reason. You have to listen though. The reason, I know it may sound like why don't we just put the digits together? Tomorrow, I'm going to show you a way to divide that is not the way that you probably normally, the way that we've practiced before with smaller numbers. It's a way where you're going to be doing exactly this right here. So it's important that you understand what I'm saying. So I get that if you've drawn the picture and you have, out of your 3 circles, 1 square in each, 1 long in each, and 2 ones, that would equal 112. And I know that you know that because you have 100, 110, and 2 ones, which makes 112. But all I want you to see is that right here, that's what they're wanting from you on those lines right there. So normally, all you're going to do is say a 1 in the hundreds, a 1 in the tens, and a 2 in the ones. Do you notice how I don't have plus signs in between of each of those? I had to write it this way because I had plus signs in between of each of those. If all I do is, right here, all I did was just gave you some place value lines. And all you did was fill in how many you have of each in each place value. Those ones had plus signs, which is why we needed to have 100 plus 10 plus 2. If you had this many ones in one of your circles, it wouldn't be considered ones anymore. And this is what I think Nolan was getting at, would be if you had to put a 10 right here, that wouldn't work. And that's what he was trying to say, is you only go up to 9 on a line, because otherwise this gets bumped and becomes a 10. That's what I know that's what you're getting at, but I was trying to...
Say is, if the numbers are all 9 or under, you can just put them together as an easier way.
You could.
If they're 9 or under.
You could, and it's totally fine to do that. But what I was trying to get at was I wanted to make sure you understood the value. I just wanted to make sure that you understood what the value was, so that you have to add up each of the values, because that's what we're going to use tomorrow. That's what I was trying to get at. So I know what you mean. Normally what you're going to do, just like we did before when we drew the pictures, if you have a 10 in there, it's going to be 1 in the tens place. If you've got 3 ones, it's going to be a 3 in the ones, and then you're going to get 13. But I wanted you to know that you could also have to look at the values. And if you're looking at the values of how much is there, you're going to get kind of something a little bit different. So I wanted you to see that part too. All right, the try it part. So turn your page to try it. And we're going to try to draw this one. if you have 319 and you're going to divide it by 2, see how I remember at the beginning of this whenever I said you may want to use ConnectEd for those manipulatives this time, and this is the reason why. Here's why, I'll tell you. Because you're going to have to do a lot of like rewriting and breaking up some of these numbers, and it's kind of a pain if you don't have it done digitally. If you're trying to do it by drawing it, it's going to take you a while, and there's kind of room for you to make some errors there and mistakes. So if I have 2 circles down here, because I'm dividing by 2, they've already made for you what 319 would look like. So remember how you start with the biggest number, which in this case are the 100 blocks. So I'm going to put this 100 block here and this 100 block here. Now I have another 100 block, but I don't have any more circles. So what am I going to do with the 100 block? Nolan, what would I do with the 100 block?
You turn it into 10 long ones. I think of it like this. You see how there's like one, can you write the word 100 on there really fast?
This?
Yeah. Okay. I look at it like, see the 1 and the 0? I think of that as 10, and that's how many of the next, the next place to the right. I think of it as that's how many you're going to add to the next place to the right.
Yes, because you're...
And however many zeros there are at the end is however many zeros there are with the 1 in front of the places.
So you're thinking of like...
0 is 10. And see how you have the extra 0. So you think of it as there's 1 0.
Yes, it's kind of like when you borrow. So when you borrow and you look to the next place and you take one away and all that stuff, that's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing is borrowing.
That's just how I remember it.
Right. It's just kind of different because we're borrowing with the pictures. And that's what makes it a little bit where people aren't really sure what they're doing. So we're borrowing with the pictures. So this 10, or this 100 right here, I turned into 10 tens that I drew right on top of it. Everybody see the 10 tens I drew? You should be drawing that too. Try to find a little bit of an area. You have the area that says my work. Use that area to draw this. So now I'm going to go ahead and start distributing all these tens. So I have 10 here that I just created that I made from that 100 block, and then I have one more. So I have a total of 11 tens, okay? So I'm going to go back and forth and distribute them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I have 11, one more. So the extra one, what do you think I'm going to do with that one? I've used all these. And now I have this one right here. What am I going to do with it? Anybody have an idea? It's going to be kind of the same thing that I just did with the 100 block. Jameson, what do you think? Split them up into one. So if you have an extra piece, you have to break it up and make it whatever the place value is that's one lower than that. So because I had an extra 100 block, I broke them up and made them tens. And because I have an extra 10 now, I'm going to break it up and make it ones. So I'm going to break that 10 up and make it ones. So now I've used that 10 because it turned into that. The square represents 100, yeah. So now I have 10 down here and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have a total of 19. 19. So now I'm going to go back and forth counting it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All I could do is 18. Did you already know in advance that all you're going to be able to do is 18? Because 19 can't be divided by 2, right? I can't evenly divide a number like 19 by 2. So now I have one left over down here. So let's go through and answer some of these questions.
So we do have to estimate, right?
This is not an estimating lesson. We estimated yesterday. Today we're dividing using these models, just like what I just showed you. That's what you're going to do today. Yes, you're going to use the models. Exactly what I just did there is what you're going to do for the lesson. Cameron, I'd like you to move to this table over here. Just quickly, move down there because he's there, and you're in the middle of them. So if you move down here, then nobody's really sitting by each other anymore. because that's who you're talking to. Why would I sit you on the other side of him? Okay, number 1 says divide the hundreds into two groups. We drew the equal groups. How many hundreds were left over? We had 1 left over when we did that, right? So we put 1 here, and then we had 1 left over. So that's what we're going to write on the line there. We regrouped the remaining the remaining 100 into 10 tens. So this one right here, remember this 100 right here that was left, we turned it into this, 10 tens. Now there was a total of 11 tens. We divided the tens into 2 groups, and we were able to fit 5 tens in each group, and we had 1 10 left over. So we drew the picture, and now we're kind of going back through and writing in everything that we did throughout all those steps.
Okay, now I get it.
Yes?
Is this what we're going to do for the oral questions today?
This is what you're going to be, yeah, this is the lesson for today. This is all the questions today.
So that's why we're not doing that.
Right. So now, number 3, we regrouped the remaining tens into 10 ones because we only had 1 of those left over. And then we had a total of 19 ones. When you look at your picture and you divided those 19 ones into 2 groups, we were able to put, how many did we put in each group? We put 9 in each group. Is that what we did? 9 in each group, and we had 1 left over. So each group had 100, 5 tens, and 9 ones. And there was 1 left over. So then 319 divided by 2 would be 159. So, like kind of what we talked about earlier, it would be 100 plus 50 plus 9. So the big 100 block represented 100, then you had 5 tens, which would represent 50, and you had 9 ones, which would represent 9. So if we use multiplication to check our answer, and we did 159 times 2, we'd get 318. And if you did, and then 318 plus the 1 gives you the one that was left over, remember, because there was that 1 left over, would give you 319. So today's lesson is not that much different than the lesson that we did before, except the numbers are bigger and we're using 100 blocks this time. And last time we only used tens and ones.
So it's going to be more.
I wouldn't say it's going to be easier. I would say it's just going to be a little bit different. So we're going to do this one together. This practice it. So turn to the practice it page. So if we were using models to find the groups, here's what I expect you to do today for the lesson, okay? So now you're on the practice it. This is like your work page. This is like, remember, because this is I know we skipped that part. We skipped that. We just skipped it so I could show you a couple of examples and you could always go back and do it in a little bit. No, don't cross it out. Go back and do it, but do it in a minute. I want to show you another example of what this should. Since we didn't take notes, this is kind of like your notes. So 344 would look like this. 300s. How many tens? 4. How many ones? 4. So there's my model. So you start with that. Okay, so you start with drawing out what it would look like. Now I need to know how many circles do I make. I make 2 circles. Because they have to be big enough to be able to fit some things inside of. So now I'm going to start with the hundreds and I'm going to start dividing up all of these things. So I'm going to take this one and put it over here. And I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put it over here. And now I have this one left. So anybody have a guess on what I'm going to do with that 100 that's left? It doesn't fit in anything. Aiden, what do you think?
Break it into 10.
Break it into tens because tens is the next thing. So I'm going to break this into tens. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 because 100 makes 10 tens. So now I'm going to cross that out so I don't get confused because I made that into this. So now I'm going to distribute all my tens. So I have 10 plus 4 more is 14. So I'm going to put 1 back and forth until I get up to 14. And just like Aiden said, if I had 14 and I was dividing it up amongst 2, it would fit 7 in each one, right? So if you knew that, you didn't have to do the distributing back and forth. Now on this one, we kind of got lucky because I used up all my 10s because it was an even number divided by 2, so I was able to like distribute all of them. But if you had any 10s left over, you'd have to bust those up into 1s now. So every time something doesn't fit and you have it left over, you would break it up into the next smaller piece. So now we have to distribute those 1s. So now I have 4 1s, and if I have 2 circles to put them in, that means I could fit 2 in each circle. And now I've used everything. So my answer would be 162. Because I have 70. Thank you. I wasn't looking closely at my picture. 172. I have 100, 7 10s, 2 1s. If I did this, which this is not what I want you to do, but this is what's coming next. If I do this division problem like this, sorry, that should be a 1. That should be a 1. And then that's a 7. That goes in 14 times. Bring down the 4. That goes in twice, right? No remainders. See how I get the same answer? So this writing, that was right there. Writing the models is the drawing out the models is a way to understand how we're dividing. Because as we do this division, we're dividing into first the hundreds. And do you see when I bring down this 1, and now I'm dividing it into 14, just like I did right here. I used 14 and I split it up. Is it clicking at all? Anybody see what we're doing? So it's the reason why we're doing the drawings is so you understand why we do what we do when we do the problem like this. So first I'm dividing into the hundreds, then I subtract what's left, and I turn them into 10s. And now I have 14 10s down here. Then I'm dividing the 2 by 14, and whatever's left, which would be the 4 1s, then I divide up the 4 1s. So that's what we're doing. And that's why we do the models first, and then we'll do this part again tomorrow. So let's do one more example. And if you've already started it, you can just watch what I do. I just want to make sure everybody's getting it. So for 468, so I drew 4 hundreds, 6 10s, and 8 1s. And I'm just going to use this whole space here because I drew really big. So I have 4 circles. And I'm going to start dividing. So I'm going to put 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. Then I'm going to take these 6 1s, or the 6 10s that I have, and go 1, 2, 3, 4. And these extra 2 I have to turn into 1s, right? So those are going to become, I'm going to move them over here. Not 10, that's 10, and that takes care of this, but I have another one. See, I had 2 left over, Anthony. Did you notice that? So because I had 2 left over, I can't separate them into 4 circles because I only had 2 left over, so I needed to make them all into 1s. So now I have 28 that I have to divide amongst 4.
I'm at 10 for each.
Oh yes, 10 for each one. You're right. So if I have 28 and I'm going to divide them by 4, how many 1s can go in each of those circles? Malachias, what do you think? 7, because 28 divided by 4 is 7, right? So 7 1s can go in each one. So then I have 100, 1 1, 110, sorry, and 7 1s. So 117 would be my final answer. And I have no remainders because it again went equally. I used everything. If you end up with something left over, it can only be a 1. It can only be ones. Should you ever have any 10s left over? Like when you have a remainder, unless you're talking really big numbers that you're working with, you're never going to have 10s that are left over. Because you can always change those 10s into 1s and then disperse them again. Okay, so you should always, if you're going to have something left over, it should be the 1s. So now I'm going to let you get started working. We've done these 2 together, so now you should be working on the last couple of this page, and then flip to the next one, and you can keep going by yourself.